Hi, I'm Jeff DeRiso from Beckman Collaborative, and today I'm going to show you how to ensure accurate data entry in Zoho CRM with validation rules. While some validations are done automatically by default, validation rules allow you to further customize that data validation. This will ensure consistent and proper data formatting in your CRM. Validation rules can be based on simple criteria, or we can harness the power of Deluge scripting language for those more complex business requirements. So let's get into Zoho CRM and I'll show you how it works. Okay, here we are in Zoho CRM. We're in a demo account here, so we don't affect any real records. So let's go to our leads module and I'll show you an example of where we could use a validation rule. So let's go into one of these sample leads here. Let's say all of our leads are in the United States, and when we capture their address, we want to make sure that we use this abbreviation. And so to do that, we want to use a validation rule. So we access our validation rules by going to the setup icon, modules and fields, clicking our leads module here. And if we hover over it, you'll see set validation rules. But we can also click on it and go here to this tab that says validation rules. So now we'll click on create new validation rule, and we choose the field that we're going to validate. In this case, we're going to use the state field. We get to choose based on criteria or using a function. And we have these options, save only and field verify and save. If I select this, it will create a little button that the user can see and click to verify the data before they save the field. But if we select save only, the validation will only happen in the background, and you'll only get an error message when you enter an incorrect value. So I'll leave save only for now, and we'll click next. Now we set our criteria for how we want to decide if this is a valid value or not. We have the option to select is, contains, is not, starts with, ends with, but in this case we want number of characters, and we want it to say if it is not equal to 2, because our abbreviations are always 2 characters. So we'll click done. And here's where we can add further criteria and choose more conditions. So we'll say country is, so we won't apply this validation rule for outside the United States. And here we can set our preference to what happens. We can stop with an error, or we can allow by alert. In this case, we want to simply show an error message and tell the user the correct way to enter the data. So we'll type that in here. Please use the state abbreviation. And we can choose whether we want to show the error message on the primary field or on the top of the page. I'll choose the top of the page. So now that we've created this rule, we'll click save. And we'll go to our leads module and test it. So let's create a new lead. And we'll enter some test data here. And we'll enter a fake address in Wyoming. And we'll make sure the country is United States, because that is part of our criteria. So then we'll try to save this record here. And here we've gotten our error at the top of the screen. And it has our custom message here in red. Please use the state abbreviation. But personally, I think it's a little more effective to have the error message on the field itself. So let's go change that and we'll see how it looks. We'll hit cancel. And let's change this rule. Instead of top of page, let's choose on primary field. Let's click save. And this time, instead of creating a new lead, let's just try to edit an existing one. Because no matter what view you're in, validation rules will always apply. So let's just type in the full New York name and we'll click save. And now you see we've gotten our error message right here, and we've outlined the field in red. So we once again have to edit the correct abbreviation, it allows us to save the field. That's a good example of a criteria-based validation rule. You could also validate your United States zip codes to make sure that the number of characters equals 5. But let's dig into another example of using a little bit more complex of a validation rule. So let's go to our deals module. And we're here in our Kanban view for our deals, and we have this organized by stages. So let's say, these are our stages at the top. And let's say that we have, in this stage, we ideally want to create a price quote. So before we get to the negotiation stage, we want to create a quote for this deal. And we do that by going to our quotes related list and clicking the plus sign. And that would pre-fill our quote for that specific deal. And we'd create the quote. And once we were done creating it, that quote, it would show up right here in this related list. Now, what we want to do with our validation rule here is we want to make sure that the deal cannot go to the negotiation stage until a quote is here in this related list. So we're going to need a validation rule that checks this quotes related list. And if there is 0, it throws an error message. So we'll go back to our validation rule setup. And we'll choose the deals module now. You can see I already have one rule here. We'll create a new validation rule. And the field will be stage. And instead of choosing based on criteria, we'll choose based on a function. And we'll again choose save only and click next. And this is where we can use Deluge scripting language to perform our more complex validation for this field. So we'll select write your own. And we'll call it check for quote. And we'll click create. Our function has been created and we've gotten some sample code here. So this argument here that's automatically been inserted is our entire record map, and it's converted to a string. So this entity map variable is just converting it back to a map and getting the record values. So this has all of our fields from our record, this entity map. And then within that, we can of course grab whatever fields we need. So for our case, we don't need email. We instead need the stage field. And the API name for that is stage with a capital S. And we also need the deal ID. So we'll do entity map.get ID. And you can see within this sample code, they've given us the error response map and the success response map. So now what we need to do is build the logic so that if we get the error, this message shows, and if not, we show the success. So we'll type in if stage equals, and this is where we copy and paste our pick list value that we want to validate. In this case, we only want to check for a quote if the deal is going to the negotiation/review stage. So we copy and paste that value. Then we open and close our brackets. And here's where we're going to do our quote check. Because we only want to check for quotes if the stage has been set to negotiation. So now we'll also create our else condition. And we'll put our success message within that. Because if the stage is not negotiation, we don't need to perform any validation, so we just automatically want to return the success response. So now to do our quote check, we'll create a variable called related quotes, and we'll do our CRM integration task. Get related records. The module name is quotes. The parent module is deals. And the number is the deal ID. So now this is going to return a list with all the related quotes in that quotes related list that we looked at a minute ago. So now we want to create another if condition. If our related quotes variable dot size equals 0. And this is where we want to copy and paste our error response. And here we can customize the error message itself. So we want to say, please add or associate a quote for this deal. And that tells the user why they're getting an error, why this deal is not being moved to the negotiation review stage. And then we'll create another else condition within that, and we'll again put our success message. And that means if the size of this list is anything besides 0, in other words, if it's not empty, we want to give that success message again because that record has been validated. So now we return this response at the end of our function, and we click Save and Associate. And then we save our rule. And now we've created our function-based validation rule. So let's go to our deals module and test it. And a great thing about these validation rules is that they work regardless of what view you're looking at. So if for example, if we take this deal that we looked at earlier, and in the Kanban view, we try to drag it to the negotiation review stage, we'll get our validation error message. Please add or associate a quote for this deal. And if I click OK, it goes back to the previous stage. So our validation rule even works in this Kanban view. But if I try to again go to the detail view and do the same thing, we once again get the same error message. So that's a good thing about these validation rules, is that they apply within different views. So one more thing that I want to mention is that validation rules only apply to updates that are made manually within the application. So if you have a validation rule on a certain module, and if you use one of these methods to update those records or add those records, the validation rules will not apply. So that is just something to know when it comes to validation rules. So let's go back to our deal screen and let's try to create a new deal. We'll add some test data here. And let's say that we accidentally set this closing date to a date that's in the past. Then we click Save. So we've gotten this validation rules. Please select a closing date that is not in the past. So now I'll show you the function that we use to do this. So we'll go back to our setup, modules and fields, deals, and validation rules. And we'll look at this closing date validation rule. The function is called check if date is in the future. So this is a very simple logic we've applied. We've gotten our closing date from this entity map, and we've converted it to a date. And if that date is before the current date, using this Zoho.currentDate variable, we throw the error message. And if not, we return the success message. And that ensures that a date that's in the past is never entered in that closing date field. So that's just another example of a function-based validation rule that can check date time values and compare them to other date time values. So we'll click close. The other thing I want to mention is that I have seen people talk about using client scripts for field validation. And while this can be done, it is limited for a couple of reasons. So we'll go to setup and I'll show you a client script that I set up. Now this client script does exactly the same thing as our validation rule does. But our client script is written in JavaScript. It's not written in Deluge scripting language. So we've used our Zoho ZDKs here, and we've created basically the same logic. If the stage is changed to negotiation or review, we check for quotes. If there are no quotes, we show our error message, and we refresh the page, which defaults that field back to its original value. While this client script does work, the limitation of client scripts is that they're limited to a specific page. For example, this one only works on the detail page. So I would have to create multiple client scripts for the create page and the edit page. And also, client scripts do not apply to the Kanban view the way validation rules do. So client scripts do have a lot of good uses to really customize the user experience, and we can go over that in future videos. But when it comes to field validation and making sure that validation happens no matter what view you're in, I would recommend validation rules using a function. Because that way, if someone happens to be in our Kanban view, so for example, if I had gone to this Kanban view with the client script, that client script would not apply when I moved it the way the validation rule did. Another use for validation rules is to use regular expressions. You can use the matches function within Deluge scripting language to insert a regular expression, which will validate the formatting of a complex field such as a SKU number or some type of code that needs to be formatted in a certain way. So that's how you use validation rules in Zoho CRM. They really help you keep your data clean by stopping human error in data entry. And using Deluge scripting language, you can really customize them based on any custom fields that you've created or any custom logic that your business processes need to follow. So I hope you got something out of this video. Please leave any questions or thoughts in the comments and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.